So I'm Rob Waterhouse. I'm the Finance Director of Global Student Accommodations European Division, GSA for short, and that's what most people perhaps refer us to. Who is GSA? GSA, we're not just in the student accommodation. Our management team was instrumental in setting up the creation of the student accommodation sector. Over the past 25 years, GSA management team have been instrumental in developing student accommodation and creating the internationally recognized asset class that it is. We've designed, developed, financed and operated in over 40 cities worldwide. This has been achieved through establishing partnerships with institutional investors, sovereign wealth managers and global investment banks, and the team has raised over 3 billion in our time. We operate in major university learning areas around the world, and we respect that while students have some common needs, the different markets and different cultures stem from different requirements too. The fact that we're the oldest player in the sector is our commitment to our long-term investment. And to that extent, we understand that you need to continually innovate your product in order to attract the students and the interests of the parents going forward. So within that, we're not just simply about a physical place to live. We're about a better way to live. Enough about GSA. What I'd like to do now is just bring up the members of the panel, and we'll start with Günther.
Yeah, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure for me to be here, and I will present passive houses for active students. We built eco-friendly houses for more than 10 years right now in Vienna and in Graz and in other university cities, and our students should be very active too. Well, this is our organization, the ÖAD Housing Office. We are 100% subsidiary of the ÖAD. It's the equivalent to the DAAD, the Deutsche Akademische Austauschdienst, and we provide accommodation for international students, but also for guest professors, grant holders. And what is very important, we are a non-profit organization, but we are 100% self-sustaining. Well, here you see the locations where we are in Austria. We accommodate 12,000 international students per year. 2/3 of these students in Vienna, and 3,000 per year live in one of our passive houses. We have right now 7 passive houses offering 950 places per month. Well, what are the benefits of a passive house or an eco-friendly house? Well, that's what we offer, that's not the benefits. What we offer is fully equipped apartments. That's different to the Netherlands, what we saw yesterday. Everything is included, even cleaning service. And yeah, we have a wide range of room categories and prices. So the price range is between 250 euro for a double room, up to 500 euros for an apartment. Well, this was the first student dorm in passive house construction in the world. It was finished in 2005. So we have now experience for more than 10 years. We have an evaluation with the Technical University in Vienna, so we know pretty well what is going on. And the feedback of the students is very positive. So we have an evaluation form each year for all our dorms, not only the passive houses. So we see what the students are, what they like, what they do not like, and we try to improve each year. Well, this is an image of Molkereistraße. This was the first passive house, which is very close to the University of Economics in Vienna and only 2 kilometers from the inner city. So within 5 minutes, you are at the University of Vienna, for example. And you can walk to the University of Economics. Well, here you see a picture, a slide from inside. This is another guest house. It's in the 15th district. We share this house with the preparatory courses of the Vienna universities. So there are 600 students each day there learning German, and the 4 floors are for student housing. Yeah, here you see some slides. We have always wooden floor, and it's fully furnished as mentioned. So our students are mainly Erasmus students. They come for 3, 4 months, 6 months, 9 months, some from 1 month. So we provide accommodation for any period they are looking for. And you see fully furnished, and a part of towels, we offer everything. Well, this is another one in Kandelgasse. Here you see in the facade as well as on the roof, we have photovoltaic. So in this house, we produce around 1/3 of the electricity by ourselves. We use it directly in the house, so it makes sense. And if you produce more, then we put it in the grid. But it's very rare. Only in July and August, there is some energy put in the grid. Well, this is at Gasgasse in Vienna, also a passive house, and on the top, photovoltaic, 60 kilowatt photovoltaic, so we produce around 1/3 of the energy, of the electricity energy by ourselves in this house. It's also a passive house. Here you see how it looks like inside. Bathroom. Well, and this is our brand new one. It's called Greenhouse. It's the first nearly zero energy student dorm in the world. It was opened in March, and we do it with 2 other student organizations. So we are for the international part, and the others 2 are having Austrian students as well as international students. And on the top, we have 250 kilowatt photovoltaic. So maybe for a period of 1 year, we will produce as much energy as we need. Well, here you see it from the other side. This is a brand new project. It will be finished next year in Leoben. It's in wooden construction. It will be the first student dorm in wooden construction, which we do. And it's also a passive house, and it's supposed to be also nearly zero energy. Well, that's a summer university we offer now for more than 5 years. We do these summer universities with 5 Viennese universities, with Donau Universität Krems, as well as with the Austrian Institute of Technology and with Passive House Austria. And it's a 3-week course about ecological housing. And the students or architects who take part also get 7 ECTS points for this summer university. Well, another summer university, which is completely different, it's about alternative economic and monetary systems. We offer this summer university also with a couple of universities, and even a German university, University Tübingen, is taking part. And here we speak about the economy of the future, climate change, what could be done to save our planet. Well, 2 years ago, we won the highest prize you can win in Austria for the Climate Protection Award for our passive houses as well as the summer universities. And well, here is my name. And if you have any questions, do not hesitate to contact me. Thank you.
Thank you, Gunther. Thank you. Cheers. So next, I'd like to bring Anouk Griffin up to the stage. And again, I'm not very good at these surnames. It helps.
Horrible
Doesn't
names.
help being English. Please.
All right.
Thank you. Where would you like to sit?
Oh yeah, I can stand up. So my name is Anouk Griffioen. It's a horrible Dutch name, I know. And I'm currently working on my PhD at the Wageningen University, which is also a horrible name. It's a small town in the east of the Netherlands. And in my PhD research, I look at, well, as my title says, saving energy when others pay the bill. And for this, I do field experiments at the student hotel. I have a background in psychology, so I'm very much interested in how you could stimulate, how you can make people change their behavior. And in this case, make them use less electricity and less warm water, and also how they use their heating. And specifically in these situations where they do not have this financial incentive to reduce their energy use, because they do not pay for their bills. So from a scientific perspective, it's a very unique project because we can do the project in a very applied setting at the student hotel. So we can really apply the theoretical ideas we have into practice. So the student hotel really serves as a living lab. And in 156 rooms at the student hotel, we have installed detailed measurement equipment. where we can measure on basically a minute-to-minute basis on how much warm water they use, their electricity use, which is split up in their lighting and the use of their sockets, and also their thermostat use, so how they set their heating. So with this, we really have an objective measurement. So it's not only looking at how you can motivate people to become more aware, but also really see on how you could change their actual behavior in these rooms. What we run at the student hotel is behavioral experiments. And typically an experiment would look like this, where students fill out a pre-intervention survey. So they first, we ask them about their behavior. So this is all self-reported behaviors. We ask them about how much they value the environment. But we also ask them, for example, how sustainable they think the student hotel is. And then after this serves as our baseline measurement. We do an intervention, and here we have control conditions and different experimental conditions. And then after a period of time, they basically fill out a survey again, so we can see the change on these different measures, what we asked for. And again, as I just said, throughout the course of the entire experiment, we have all these objective measurements. So besides them just stating, well, okay, I improved my behavior, we can also check this with their actual behavior in their rooms. So I'm not going too much into detail about these interventions, but what I wanted to just tell you a little bit about the students at the student hotel and some key maybe takeaways from the experiments is that we see it's a very international student population. As mentioned before already today, the students have very different backgrounds and also how familiar they are with sustainability, and also how important they also might find it because they have experience with this. So there is a lot of variability in this. Something really interesting also, what we found across 2 experiments is that how sustainable they think the residence is, so in this case, how sustainable they think the student hotel is also related to how much energy they actually use. So we see that when they think that it's a more sustainable residence, that they actually use less electricity. And that this perception of the sustainability of the hotel also changed throughout the experiment. So from before to after the experiment, they actually thought it was more sustainable just by participating in this research. And finally, just as a point to also check whether people, what they state and whether this also corresponds to their behavior, we do see that there is a clear relation between that. So when they value the environment more, they also actually use less energy. And this is a bit what I wanted to talk about in terms of my project, and these are the people who also make it all possible. Thanks.
Thank you. Cheers. So next coming to the stage is Joanna Romanovic, who works for the NUS and is focusing on, sorry, I get the exact wording so I don't embarrass myself, Student Switch Off Project.
Hi, everyone. So as Rob said, I'm Joanna, and I work for NUS, which is the National Union of Students in the United Kingdom, and we represent 7 million students in higher and further education. And I'm here to talk to you about Student Switch Off, which is an energy-saving program that we run. So SAVES incorporates Student Switch Off in different countries, and I'll talk about that in a second. But basically, as Anouk mentioned, most student housing these days have an all-inclusive concept. So you pay one fee that includes your bills. So there is less incentive, some can say, for us to save energy. Or you might feel you need to use more energy because your rent is so high anyway. So we started doing this project 7 years ago in Britain, under the umbrella name of Student Switch Off, and we've had an expansion into 5 countries as of last year through EU funding. So in essence, at each university we work with, there are a certain number of dorms, and they compete against each other to see who can save the most energy. And we are looking at smart meter data, so I guess that's quite integral, and not only if you run this competition, but in general, so you can have interventions. If you can see there's a lot of usage, you can see where it is. So we look at energy usage prior to competition starting, and then we look at it at the end of the project. And I'll tell you in a second what our results are. It is a serious topic, but we kind of approach it in a positive manner, because a lot of environmental media these days can be gloom and doom, kind of we're all going to die scenario, whereas we kind of try to make it a bit more fun and engage people that way. So we try and build on kind of social and peer-to-peer relationships. So we train students at the start of the year to become ambassadors for the project, and then they can engage their peers through kind of what we tell them the project is about and make them excited about it. We use Facebook, and we also do kind of traditional chatting to people. So we kind of get the students and ourselves to the universities and chat to the students about the project and what they can do to save energy. We feed back to students how much energy they're using, so there's this normative feedback. So we've developed, there's a little snapshot over there, an online dashboard where students can see how much energy their hall has used. So we're not just telling them save energy, they can actually see that they're saving energy through the dashboard. We also have national winners. So with the 5 countries that we work with, we can reward the best hall at the national level and as well international. So there's a bit of competition going on. So like I mentioned, it's an important issue that we tackle in a fun way. So we raise awareness among students on kind of how to save energy. And it's also positive in the sense that when they leave their accommodation, they have positive behaviors. When they move into private accommodation, they're not faced with massive bills. And these days as well, in the UK, it's a massive problem in terms of rent. So anything that we can do to help students reduce their costs is great. And finally, we kind of aim to create links across student groups across Europe. So we've twinned all the universities that take part, and for them to see that their peers across Europe are doing the same thing, so they feel part of a big community. So like I said, we work in a number of universities, 17 in total. 2 of them are housing providers, and those are in Sweden, because accommodation there is separated. In the UK, we have 7. In Lithuania, we have 5. In Greece, we have 2, and in Cyprus, we have 1. And overall, in each of those universities in total, we had 25,000 students each year. So we just finished first year of the project. We're funded for 3 years to do it. So we focus on 4 main behaviors. They might seem quite simple, but actually they kind of have massive impacts. So we look at students switching off lights, which seems quite obvious, but doesn't always happen. We look at students switching off appliances when they leave their rooms, not putting the heating, so it's a sauna in the room, putting a layer on instead, and covering their cooking equipment when they cook to preserve energy as well. So we've had really positive results so far. We've had average savings of 4.5% across all our European partners, which is really great. We've had a lot of engagement in our activities in terms of photo competitions that we run, climate quizzes that we run, and kind of training that we run. We have hopefully enhanced student experience, so it's actually quite nice to hear a lot of sessions today were about the student experience. And we kind of try and create a student experience for them that isn't alcohol-related, that is something more educational, that they can put on their CV in terms of learning new skills. We've had shifts in behavior, so like Anouk, we do a lot of monitoring evaluation across the year, pre-intervention, post-intervention, that kind of stuff, focus groups, so we can see there have been shifts in behavior, which is great. We won an award, so our Swedish partners who are in the audience won an award for the hard work they've done in Sweden in terms of engaging students in their housing. And kind of to finish off, we have some high aspirations. So we want to reach the 50,000 students over this academic year, in addition to last year. We want to finalize our dashboard, which shows all the saving, make it more intricate. And kind of we want to create a model so universities kind of can take this on and develop it themselves, kind of on a self-funded basis without the funding from the EU. And that is it from me. Thank you.
Thank you. And next up, it's Nick Katz from Splittable.
Hello, I'm Nick Katz. I'm founder and chief housemate of Splittable. Splittable is a financial platform for helping the world's growing population of renters to manage their household expenditure. Our vision is to harmonize the relationship between people and their home to help create the best experience of living together. There's over 40 million housemates and growing across the United States and Europe and the UK. Right now we're based in London, but the app is live in over 40 different countries around the world. These housemates are spending hundreds of billions of pounds worth on different items in the home, from rent to groceries to nights out and their rental deposit or other things in the home. And this shared expenditure can cause a lot of conflict. I know from brutal experience myself, this is actually the spreadsheet that I was using to live with my girlfriend and my best buddy in Dalston in London. And if you look closely enough, you can actually see my account number, but I think you can only put money into it, which is fine. But we got in a massive fight at the end of our tenancy. I found out that my friend had been tracking all sorts of things, basically, behind our backs, beers, burgers, different meals, added them onto our spreadsheet at the end of the tenancy and asked for all the money back at the end. We'd already gotten in a couple different fights, and it just blew our friendship to smithereens. Not until I teamed up with my now co-founder, Vasanth, did I realize that this problem actually exists for many, many people. In fact, most people I talk to have a story that's similar to this. I've never done this before, but has anyone here ever had a problem with household expenditure and the people you've lived with? Raise your hands if you have. Nice. All right, so that's at least 30% of you. Good. There's a problem we're solving. And spreadsheets really suck to solve this. So our solution is splittable. You and your housemates are essentially a team, whether you like it or not, and you can use our app to make sure you know what your standing is in the house. This is our all-squared meter that demonstrates essentially who should pay for the next thing by showing your net credit and debt position within the household. As you enter expenditure into the platform, we alert anyone who's involved in that expenditure in real time that they've been involved. And with the new funding round that we've just closed, $1.2 million, we're going to be building a payments infrastructure to underpin Splittable so we can start moving money around the home between housemates as well as externally to suppliers. So this is just a couple of screenshots of what the app looks like. There's a timeline on the left where you can track all your expenses. We're actually redesigning all of this, so in 2 to 3 months, it's going to look hopefully even a lot better. You can invite your housemates through WhatsApp, through SMS, through email, any sort of messaging channel that you might have. You can add any expenditure for the home, like I said, from rent to deposits to food, nights out, whatever it might be. And then you can see what your position is in the home. And rather than worrying about who should pay each other back for every tiny expenditure, you can just basically operate like who should pay for the next thing and just keep paying it forward. So I think one of the proudest things for us as a business is it really feels like we're genuinely helping people. We have housemates all over the world commenting, leaving reviews on the app saying that we've helped smooth out money issues between them and their housemates. That's from one student named Tanya. The all-squared meter sort of eliminates awkward conversation about money, and another chap just saying that actually this has helped us kill the Google spreadsheet, which was such a pain to manage. I've worked in real estate my whole career, mostly in commercial real estate, and I just don't feel like the typical consumer really should have to go through the pain of administering an entire spreadsheet just to manage this sliver of their life. I'd like to hear what other people think, but I don't think any of us are here saying that students are the easiest market to make money off of. A lot of us are here because we want to help them actually live better, longer, healthier lives while they're in school. And I think the best technologists and real estate developers remember that it's less about the actual profits you make or the exits you get in the future and more about trying to bring a bit of delight to the people that you work with, your constituents, your customers. So that's Splittable. Thank you.
And last up is Rob Moyle, COO of Campus Living Villages.
Running out of chairs.
You're right on the end. Or do you want to take this one?
I'll go around. It's fine. Hi, everyone. Rob Moyle from Campus Living Villages. I'm the operations director in the UK. For those of you that aren't familiar with who we are a student accommodation provider, but one of the unique features, I suppose, of our student accommodation is we're based in 4 countries. So while I'm based in the UK, you'll note my accent isn't English in any form or fashion. I'm Australian, and I've had the unique privilege of actually being working in student accommodation, not only in Australia, but in the UK. Overall, we manage 45,000 beds. We have about 60 university partners globally. So that's quite interesting. We've got about 10,500 beds in total in the UK. This is an interesting subject for me as the ops guy, because I suppose I'm the guy who's sort of delivering on many promises that many people make at a village level and at the coalface, I suppose, not only to university partners, but to the students and our residents. I always approach technology really looking at, well, how can that help the student experience? Right? Technology in itself is just a tool. And it's fascinating hearing from our panellists here some of the things they're doing, and the way we could interact actually as an operator with some of the things and projects you're looking at. I can give you examples, I suppose, where we are using that technology in our business. Some of that probably doesn't sound so exciting. It could be as easy as a student logging in online and looking to see whether there's a free washing machine, and they don't have to wait at the laundry area. Or it could be self-selecting of rooms, so they can find their flatmates, find people that are doing similar interests or have similar interests or doing similar courses, and actually self-selecting the rooms around those things. Or it can be as simple as having our Facebook site and connecting people that way through social media. So I'm here to answer some of your questions. I mean, I can talk from a practical experience and what we're doing from a technological area. I can also talk about some of our buildings, and again, you know, in Australia, some of the issues we have would be looking after water and not using so much water in our buildings, and what we do in our buildings there, so that we're using brown and grey water, and using solar panels to make our buildings more energy efficient. And then of course in the UK, again, it's something different altogether. We're more worried about how we're going to keep the students warm rather than cool. So that's me very broadly, and I look forward to answering any of your questions.
Okay, well, thank you everyone for your brief introductions and presentations. What we'll do is we'll start a few questions here at the panel, and then we'll pass out to the wider audience. But one of the questions that I've got is, in 3 years' time, the new entrants coming into our student communities will have only known the 21st century, which is quite scary. How do we see technology impacting the way that people are going to live together going forward? Now, obviously, Nick, we've seen a great example from yourself, but are there other ideas that people are seeing or being made aware of that we can actually see this is shaping the future of how people are going to live together going forward?
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the entire sort of sharing economy, I guess, has been realized sort of most fully with this generation of millennials. And I think it'll impact everything from a real estate perspective, in the sense that I kind of believe that these younger people, I guess I'm a millennial right at the northern end, but I think real estate is going to increasingly be looked at more as a service than necessarily an asset. And with that service, there comes sort of completely different varying levels of services. A number of players now sort of emerging in what's called the co-living space, particularly in the US, like WeWork launching this We Live concept, where, you know, they are specifically delivering property and services to people who are, you know, moving into what's essentially like a longer term sort of hostel. And they're gonna want to have it sort of seamless, to be able to check into that new unit, to be able to click a button and have their laundry done on demand, be able to have a car pull up out front if they need to go on a trip somewhere, to be able to manage their expenditure, hopefully in our app. And it just kind of goes on until, I guess, such a point where, you know, with the Internet of Things and biometrics and wearables, all of a sudden, there's not going to be a huge distinction between sort of real estate, bricks and mortar, and the digital world of services that are interlinked with that bricks and mortar.
And Rob, from your perspective, how do you see technology actually interacting with the operational side of properties? Because that's obviously an area where there's theoretically savings to be had.
Yeah, absolutely. I look to the hotel world in many ways, and looking at what's happening there, and the way guests in hotels are being looked after with technology by different hotel providers. You know, it can be something as simple as using the mobile phone as your key, rather than issuing a key to a student. You know, how many of us have dealt with lost keys of all sorts, right? Whether they are a card or a physical key. I can see technology being used that way. Of course, you know, the piece that interests me is the way students are learning, and I suppose we're, you know, partnered with many universities and looking at the way education is evolving and what that actually might mean to us as residencies. and how students might want to actually learn and live in their environment, given that, you know, predominantly they're there to get an education, right? And we're there supporting in a partnership way with our universities and what's going to happen in that education area and the way technology is changing the way students are learning. And I think we need to adapt and make sure that our halls of residence and our accommodation is supporting our university partners in delivering the outcome and the learning needs that need to occur.
And Gunther, technology is actually key in sort of like how passive houses have sort of like gone on going forwards, and you know, the likes of renewable energy and just the technology. How do we retrofit old buildings to become more efficient from an energy perspective without just the bog standard, let's change a few LED light bulbs?
Well, our passive houses are mainly new buildings. It's possible to make a retrofit also in passive house standard. But what we do with passive house standard or eco-friendly houses is keep it as simple as possible. So in fact, it's very, very simple. In 1969, man was able to fly to the moon. Where's the problem to build an eco-friendly house? It's no problem at all. But the most important point is to have the right persons. So planning in the first way, and then to know what to do. The right architects, the right technicians, and then you will have a very nice and eco-friendly house. That's the most important point. And keep it simple. That's very, very important.
And that's great. And obviously new builds and passive housing is probably the most effective and efficient way to produce that. But you know, we're seeing here in Amsterdam and lots of places in Germany that refurbishments are the most appropriate for student accommodation. How does passive house working in a refurbishment?
It's also possible. It depends if, for example, in Vienna there are a couple of very old buildings. In that case, it makes not sense to make a passive house. You can reduce the energy consumption up to a certain level, but to reach passive house standard then costs too much. So you have to evaluate each project if it makes sense to reach passive house standard or not. But you can reach a very good standard even in retrofitting. If it's passive house standard or not, I think that's not so important. The most important point is to reduce the energy consumption as much as possible. And it has to be cost efficient for sure.
Okay. So if I'm an investor in student accommodation, what savings would I expect to see from passive house?
Well, I think if you think in the long run, I know John Maynard Keynes said in the long run we are all dead, but if you think in the long run, then I think you have to build eco-friendly houses, because in the long run it makes sense for sure. Maybe 10 years, 15 years. If you build a house and sell it 5 years later, maybe it's not very interesting for you. But if you want to keep the house and to have it for 20, 30, 40 years, then it makes sense for sure, because energy bills will go up, that's for sure too.
Okay, so I'm getting the impression that we need a combination of efficiency through passive housing, but we also need to sort of look at the students and how they can interact on and help the operator in keeping energy bills down. It's a question for both of you, I guess, but what is it that we can do? We've obviously seen how students can save, but are they gimmicks, or are they genuine things that are genuinely going to save energy going forward?
I mean, they generally save energy. We have hard data that we look at to feed back to students how much energy they have saved. So the whole project is around having good metering and having smart meter data to let them know. So we are able to tell how much energy they have saved. But I guess kind of going forward, kind of how we change behavior is about normalizing it from day one. And kind of, especially with international students, I was an international student moving to the UK. And I moved to a city, everybody was cycling. So, I started cycling, everybody was recycling. So I started recycling. I mean, I grew up in the least environmentally friendly country. I grew up in Dubai, where things just go through the roof in terms of energy consumption and utilities. And I moved to a place where it was normalized. So I was kind of the outsider, but not doing those things. So kind of normalizing it in that context, I think, is really important as well.
Okay, so students are sheep.
They're not sheep, but we want to kind of inflict positive habits. So kind of the whole theory of the project is kind of habit discontinuity hypothesis, where if you move to a new place, you kind of are going to take on new habits and kind of discard old ones. So we're kind of trying to kind of inflict kind of positive behaviors.
Sure.
which are positive environmental behaviors.
And are you seeing that in areas, because obviously you're in the UK, and the UK model is very much an all-inclusive, or certainly 99% of student accommodation and the purpose-built sector. How and it comes in perfectly into your PhD, you know, how are you able to help students work how they can save energy when actually it has no financial impact to them?
Well, I think it also goes a bit with the whole idea of what we've been hearing here before, is the whole community building, and that the students, that it's not so much that you just live in a house and you pay your bills and that's what all you do there, but it's really a community. And also what Joanna was saying before, that you see what other students are doing, so it's really this normative behavior. So you see that others are recycling, you also start recycling. So it's not so much that you benefit from it maybe in a financial perspective, but you do benefit from it more as well socially. So, I mean, if you're the one always throwing all your waste and dirt in the kitchen, people will see it, and that also has no positive impact on your reputation, for example, in the hall you're living in. So that for the recycling. And then for the energy use, it's also a bit of for them becoming more aware of the impact that they can have, so that they also feel that with their actions, that maybe not on their money, but they can have a positive impact also on the environment. And that from the student housing perspective, and also from people providing the student housing, that they also provide more, also some, educational, I don't know whether you can say it like that, but also have a positive impact by telling them what is good for the environment and how they can do their share in terms of their own behavior, little things, how they can change that.
Hey, Rob, I have a quick
Sure.
story, as well as maybe a question for you. I used to lead sustainability at Colliers International in the UK, and one of my favorite sustainability stories I ever heard was from Louise Ellison, who was the head of sustainability at Quintain, who's a big developer in London. And they basically started having competitions for their students, I think it was each semester, where whoever reduced, either in the hall or maybe it was by unit, but I think it might have been by hall, whoever reduced their energy consumption the most, Quintain would just buy them pizzas. So Quintain ended up spending 200 or 300 quid a semester on pizza, and saw their energy bills across the estate drop by something ridiculous, like 20%, like millions of pounds. And I just wondered, from the work you're doing with that dashboard, what are some of like the results you're seeing by making that kind of competitive and transparent?
So our aim for the project was between 5 and 6% last year, and this year with the dashboard we're aiming for 10%. But across the board, we've done the project in other universities as well, so kind of under the umbrella of SAVES, it's 17 universities, but we've been doing the project for 8 years in the UK before that, and the average is about 8% saving. But we've never had a dashboard before, so students couldn't see kind of on a day-to-day basis how much they're saving. So we're really hoping that actually this will really help students decrease their energy further. But we kind of, in terms of rewarding students, we sometimes do have pizza, but we often have a garden party, depends on university, or kind of give them more kind of environmentally friendly products as prizes. We also get lots of ice cream from Ben & Jerry's, who are Dutch, I believe. Danish. Dutch. And that always goes down really well as well. So we kind of try and link our prizes with the ethos of the project as well. So it's kind of positive kind of influence in that way.
And Rob, you operate in 4 different markets in 4 different countries. What is it that are you seeing difference in cultures, or?
Yes and no. Certainly if you were to look at the physical properties and expectations of students, they're similar, but I suppose if we went to the American market and looked at some of the properties there, they'll have swimming pools, climbing walls, tennis courts, and be more like a resort type.
Which school was that?
Well, we have various properties that have, and that's nearly demanded, and that's because I suppose in many ways education is very expensive in the US market. And that's been driven by the students expecting those things. And it's been very interesting for me, coming to the UK about 5-6 years ago, just the amount of change that's actually even occurred in the UK market. I remember when I first came, we were talking about, well, let's Wi-Fi all the properties, right? Well, there wouldn't be a property that you wouldn't think about that wouldn't have Wi-Fi just as standard practice. But when I first came to the UK sort of 6 years ago, it wasn't standard in all buildings, and people now are sort of scrambling to do that. But from a technological standpoint, I mean, I think the exciting thing for me as an operator is it's going to allow us to provide a personalised experience to all our residents. You know, in many ways, technology sort of, in many places has sort of been used in a cookie cutter sort of format, but as we get to know our residents more and we get that more data, we can then actually personalise the way we communicate with them and, you know, take them on a journey, whether it's for 1 year, 2 years and 3 years, and connect them with like-minded people, making sure that they're, you know, being connected to other students with similar interests, and actually talk about personalising their program and the student experience for them as they arrive, as opposed to just, you know, putting on one big bash and a barbecue or something like that. Let them know that there are other events that might interest them. So if they're interested in chess, have a chess night. If they're, you know, interested in going and seeing some sites, being able to tailor-make that experience for them if they want to have, you know, academia come into the halls and there's a special need for various students, working with our university partners and bringing that in, and making sure that we have our buildings designed to enable that, so we become an extension of the university campus rather than sort of the accommodation guys sort of over the road.
One of the key things that we're here to talk about is obviously future-proofing student residences, but that ultimately boils down to long-term investors wanting to ensure that their assets are continuously improving and rents moving in the right direction. What are the major disruptors that could really jeopardize that position for an investor?
Again, I think earlier on I was talking about how I think education is changing. And, you know, people talk about MOOCs and the way education is being delivered. And I think the days where an accommodation provider just thinks there's going to be a 40-week, 42-week, 50-week contract, right? I think we need to be flexible enough and look at, well, what does it mean for our universities and students where they might be actually on campus for 12 weeks, right? Doing intensive study, getting an on-campus experience, and then they might go away and then come back again. So for me, it is actually making sure our model is flexible enough to manage the changes in the way education is going to occur in the future. As well as using technology, obviously, to make sure that our buildings are being maintained in the way that they should. So, you know, that might be various property management systems that we have in the background, making sure the maintenance is being done in a way so that we've got a product that we're very proud of and students want to stay in.
And Gupfer, from your perspective, you know, you're in the passive house business because you obviously believe energy prices are going out of control.
Well, I think in the long run they will go up. Right now they are relatively down. Oil prices is very cheap at the moment. But I think in the long run it will make sense. And even there is an EU directive that up to 2020, you have to reach nearly the zero energy standard if you build new houses. So what we do right now is maybe standard in latest 5 years in Europe. So you will have to do it anyway. So we do it right now, and well, I think it's a kind of win-win situation because the students are very satisfied. We are not the owner of the house. We lease it for 15 or 20 years, but our energy bill is very low, and even the owner of the house is very happy because the value of the house is very sustainable because the energy costs are so low. So I think it's a win-win situation for all. And if you want to reach the 2-degree goal, which will be on the agenda in Paris now in December, in the housing sector you can save so much energy. It's the most easiest way to save energy in the housing sector.
And are you seeing any government incentives, not just in in Austria, but anywhere else in Europe? I know you appreciate that. I don't believe you actually get incentives in.
Yes, there are some incentives, but we would do it without incentives too. But I think the EU Directive 2020, it will be compulsory on the EU level, so you have to do it then. And the better you know it right now, how to build in that way, the better it is for you or for your company, for investors. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks. Well, if it's okay, unless anyone else on the panel has got any questions for one another, I was going to open the questions to the audience. We haven't got any yet. We'll have to. Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. You saved me. That's my bit.
Hello, Charlie McGregor from the Student Hotel. I've got a bit of a question. We're obviously working with the Nuke on using our buildings for a study. One of the reasons why we wanted to work together with the university was because we didn't really know the answers of how to future-proof our building, especially for sustainability for students. So, and the reason we didn't know that is because we had no idea of the behavior of student housings, of students in our rooms. We didn't know how long they were in the room for. We didn't know how long they showered for, how long they used. Did they use their little kitchens that we're keen to build for them, etc., etc. So we really started a longer-term project to try and understand the behavior, and then we can build systems around it to that fit into that behavior, and of course, hopefully find some subtle measures to I guess try and change their behavior on the time that they're with us. And we're pretty conscious that we all have our students for quite an important year in their life. They've normally just left home and they come and stay with us for a short period of time. And if we can change that type of behavior when they're with us, then hopefully they carry on and get there. But I guess my question to the panel is, I mean, how do we know that, how do we know that the changes you're making will work, Rob, in your thing, because we have so little data to see what they're currently doing with behavior. The idea that this generation are really into recycling, but if you put recycling bins in your kitchens, I question if you, do they get used? I mean, that's one of the things that I'm really struggling with. How do you know what our customers really do already, and how do you adapt to that?
Well, I have one sort of quick answer, which is that, I don't know, if you look at real estate development as an analogy for software development, it's sometimes really easy to completely overcomplicate things. And I find every time we actually talk to one of our customers about why they're using our platform in a certain way or what they want out of it, they generally tend to be quite communicative. And I think that's actually been always one of the issues with the real estate development community, is that oftentimes the people building the buildings are kind of up in ivory towers while students are on the ground, and sometimes it's as simple as literally buying them some pizza and talking to them and saying, how much are you cooking at home? Obviously there's a whole lot of data analysis you can do, devices you can be tracking all this stuff, but I do wonder sometimes if it's not just a lot of the time quite a lot simpler.
I think just by asking, you can get already a lot of information, but also knowing, like, there's always some people you cannot reach. There's always some things people will not tell or they're just not really aware of. For example, we ask people, how long do you shower on average? Most people do not know. They have no clue. They don't put a timer up when they go shower. And I mean, even asking that question may make them more conscious about it, but simply they cannot answer that question. So for these type of things, and also how much electricity do you use? They don't know. Like, it's really hard to answer such a question. And I think with these data, then you can really see how much they use it, where there's like, at what times all students are at home, when there's like really peak consumption in terms of energy use, and then you can really also see in terms of the design of the buildings how you can adapt to how they are using it. So I do think that it is, I think it's both ways, so that you do ask them how they feel and what they think of the buildings and how their own behavior, but also just more the objective data to really know what's actually going on in the buildings. And that's also the objective of my research, and right now I'm analyzing it, so I have no conclusive answers on what they're actually doing yet, but I hope that I'll have that soon, so I can tell also a bit more on how they're behaving and what their use is. With the setup of the experiments now is that we send out a survey, it's an online survey via email. Doesn't work at all. It's maybe like 2% response rate, like a couple of people fill it in, and the rest, they didn't see it, or they don't know you, and then that's why they don't fill it in. So what I do right now, I actually go by, I knock on their door, and I ask them, hello, I'm doing research here, can you please fill it in? And once they see a face to somebody doing research there, they're actually really willing to also participate, and only but for them filling out a questionnaire already makes them, a lot of them just want to talk about it. They want to talk, well, you know, there are some questions about, do you consider yourself an environmentally friendly person, for example? And then some people say yes, and then there's also all these questions about their behavior. And then afterwards they say, well, you know, I thought I was it, but then actually when I look at my behavior, I am actually not doing all these things. So I think in general they are really responsive once they get to do it, and they are also really interested in it. And as I was mentioning before, it's a very international student population. So for some people, it is a totally new topic, whereas for other people, it is just something they already know of, and it's nothing necessarily new. But in general, I think they're positive about it, and also they think it's a good thing also when the accommodation also does something for it. So it's not only them. So it shouldn't be something that they feel like, well, I should change my behavior so the student hotel in this case can save costs, for example. I mean, that's not the idea they get from it now. That's not the response I got, luckily.
Yeah, and just kind of to add to that, so we kind of do monitoring and evaluation in our project as well, so kind of pre-intervention and post-intervention. And we try and not bias it, so the survey is kind of marketed as a lifestyle survey. So we're not creating kind of conscious bias, that's an environmental survey. And we have about 15, we're aiming for 15%, and we've hit it so far each time. I mean, some countries, it's quite interesting, are much better at survey responses. It seems more intrinsic, like in Sweden, it's amazing. Whereas in some countries like Lithuania, we really struggle with responses. But overall, we had 16% last year, and we've already reached our target for this year. And then we follow up with those in May. And then we're actually going to do another survey this November for students who moved out of student accommodation into private accommodation, and seeing have they kind of taken those behaviors on. And so we've not done that yet, but we have done over across the year, and there have been positive shifts. But the starting point varies as well culturally, which is interesting. So kind of in countries like Sweden and the UK, the starting point is higher in terms of kind of knowledge and behavior, as opposed to like Cyprus and Greece, where it's lower, but then they have a bigger movement kind of across the project. So that's quite interesting as well.
Just switching this back to the internet and technology, and just how does marketing affect the future-proofing of student accommodation? It's about visibility of buildings.
Well, obviously marketing is very important, particularly when my marketing director's up the back there. I better make sure I say that. You know, I suppose it is having all the various channels that the students want to use. You know, I think the stats say that students, you know, 70% of their internet content is off their mobile phone now. So, you know, while there are obviously various streams of marketing that you can use, whether that's, you know, a brochure, a good old-fashioned brochure, or whether that's, you know, your website, you know, it is, again, making sure that you have the various channels that they want to go to. And that could be a Twitter feed, that could be your Facebook, you know, that could be Instagram. So it could be quite varied. So again, it is trying to keep up with all those trends, right? You know, 10 years ago, no one was really using Facebook, right? I wouldn't know anyone that wouldn't have a hall of some sort that wouldn't have a Facebook site. But if they don't, I can guarantee you their residents are going to have some form of Facebook site or a community online sort of separate from the company one. So it is, again, staying relevant and keeping up with all the changes. You know, that's a full-time role in itself, and looking at the way students want to use technology and making sure that you are where they want you. You know, one thing I have noticed, I suppose, is you know, we've got to make sure the technology in place enables the student to get what they want to get done quickly, right? So if you have pages and pages of text, right, students don't want to read the pages and pages of text. It's making sure your message is very short and sharp, and you've got your story, and you can connect people, so there's that social proof for other residents that have stayed with us. Because again, I'm just a corporate bloke, and I suppose I'm meant to be saying all the nice things about, you know, us as a company. It is making sure that those other channels where residents that are staying with us, and residents have stayed with us, you know, they come our advocates, because in fact, in many ways, that word of mouth as well as online and word of mouth is going to be what's going to sell our product in many ways.
You want to say something?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of a little bit out of the game with like pure play real estate marketing, but I think one thing that we certainly see as a platform is sort of moving deeper into the sort of marketing funnel, where it's one thing to get people to your website or to your app. It's another to get them to convert and do something, and then it's a whole nother to kind of get them to do something repeatedly over time. So I think especially a lot of the real estate players will probably, hopefully, increasingly be looking to partner with companies like Uniplaces or Splittable, who are solving, you know, different problems for customers digitally, and might be able to kind of team up and be able to expose the brand in areas where the students are engaged beyond just that sort of, you know, 3-month window where you're marketing really hard to get people to come to your front door and visit your property. I would like to hope that what the future holds for us is, if we were to partner with a big student organization, maybe we could white label Splittable, and you know, their brand might be sat there every day when someone's entering an expenditure. And that way, when that student moves out, our brand as well as their brand is the last thing they saw. So it's, you know, it's a stickier, sort of deeper part of the marketing funnel that I think a lot of people are beginning to explore a lot more.
Sure. All right, let's see. Oh, I did. American football here.
I'll have 2 questions, one for Joanna and one for Robert. For Joanna, what are the prerequisites to get into your project?
What are they?
What are the prerequisites to get
yeah,
into your project as a university or a private investor? Just some details. And for Robert, I want to ask, I mean, when we talk about like 40, 50 years ahead, and you said the educational system and all those distant learning, already lots of them on the net, like lots of online learning portals, even universities. Do you see that as a threat for the future of the housing market?
No, and I think
like internet and movie theaters and stuff.
No, and the reason being, I think, you know, we become an integral part of an experience that you can't have online, right? And that face-to-face.
Education may go online. That's what I'm.
Well, and it will, right? But they might do some of the study actually on campus. You know, maybe not go to a lecture hall as such. They might do it with a small group in a room, maybe in the residencies, as opposed to go to a lecture hall. Or, you know, my dream would be connecting students from all over the world, right, and bringing them into your residency. So, you know, if we have someone studying a particular subject in the US and we've got someone in the UK and they're both in our residencies, and we can connect them because we both understand they've got an interest or they're studying that way, and we can enable that, I think that would be fantastic. But again, from a accommodation standpoint, I think our model will have to change, and the length of time potentially students might stay with us, or their needs will change, but I think we can adapt, and I think there is something about, you know, the friendships and the experience a student has at university, and you know, whether that is on campus or in our residencies, that at this point, maybe 50 years, I you know, who knows, right? 50 years, if you look, you know, 50 years ago, right, no one would have expected to be where we are now. So to say where we're going to be in 50 years is tough, but I do think the accommodation halls and that on campus and that face-to-face experience is still really important, but that might be enabled in a different way with technology.
Cool. Thanks.
Okay, so thanks for the question. So in terms of getting engaged and the prerequisites for that, I guess what's important is to ensure you have some good metering, because the project is around looking at meter data. So it's useful definitely to have pre-intervention data, so a year's worth of data of that student building. I mean, if you have sub-metering, that's great. So, for example, in our Swedish housing providers, it's been divided by corridors. So those much finer detail. So students might feel kind of more involved because it's at a lower level as opposed to whole building. So I guess that's really important. And the other important thing is just to make sure you have some staffing time and resource available to do that, because we do stuff on social media, we do face-to-face visits. So we're kind of in the process of looking at kind of the legacy plan and how it works, and I think it will be quite different in different countries. So let's say in the UK, we have people in NUS who are responsible for kind of delivering that project in different universities, and the university just gives us access to the dorms. And to their students, whereas in other places, like in Cyprus or in Greece, the project coordinator is actually based within that university. So it's like a slightly different model over there. But basically the importance, is making sure you have meter readings and kind of resources available in terms of time, really, because we are able to provide you with marketing materials and whatever you need.
Then has to be related to the university, like any private...
No, so we've worked, in terms of the SAVES project, we work with universities and private providers, although, I don't know, Agneta, you might want to correct me. You are kind of more student-led, a kind of housing provider, not for profit, basically. But we have worked with Unite in the past, so we do work with private housing providers.
And the measurements, do you need to monitor them online or just on their declaration or whatever?
So we've kind of done it differently in the past as well. So normally what we used to do is get meter data every kind of 2 months and kind of analyze it and feed it back to students kind of on a 2-month basis. But now with the online dashboard, it's as up to date as the meter readings are. So, if you have a daily meter readings, it's updated daily. If you have, weekly meter readings, it's updated weekly. And it has an option of manual upload and kind of automated upload.
So you can manually upload them as well. Okay, cool.
Yes. Because I think part of the issue has been actually with the dashboard taking longer time to develop, that there are third-party providers who provide the energy to universities, and that kind of created a bigger blocker than we anticipated. That it's not just the university gives its data, then to go to someone else and then go back. So it's kind of having that good conversation as well to be able to get that data from your meters. It's another prerequisite, not just having them.
In that case, I'd like to thank you all for attending this session.